Have you ever looked around and wondered how your life ended up here? You're not where you thought you'd be. You don't know what you're really aiming for anymore. And the voice inside you, the one that used to be filled with wonder, has gone quiet. This is what it feels like to be lost. But here's a question worth asking. What if feeling lost isn't a problem to be fixed, but a message to be heard? Across ancient cultures, spiritual teachings, and modern psychology, one truth echoes through the ages. Before transformation, there is confusion. Before clarity, there's wandering. And before we find our way, we must first be willing to admit that we are lost. In this video, we'll explore why so many people, despite their achievements, connections, and options, feel deeply adrift. We'll uncover what ancient philosophers, mystics, and modern science have to say about this invisible epidemic, and how to begin the journey back to yourself. If you feel like you've lost your spark, your direction, or your purpose, this video is for you. Let's begin. The inner drift, how we lose ourselves. Most people don't get lost all at once. It happens slowly, quietly, over time. It starts when you make small compromises, ignoring your instincts to fit in, staying in relationships that shrink you, choosing what's safe over what's true. Eventually, you stop recognizing the person staring back at you in the mirror. Ancient Stoics had a word for this inner disconnection: alienatio animi, a kind of estrangement of the soul. Not from the world, but from yourself. Marcus Aurelius warned that we become strangers to ourselves when we let the noise of the world drown out the wisdom within. Modern psychology echoes this. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Why? Because the moment we stop numbing, we're forced to confront the truth. That we've been drifting, that we've abandoned ourselves, that we've been living by scripts that don't belong to us. In the Buddhist tradition, this state of inner dislocation is called dukkha, a deep unease, a suffering born not just from pain, but from misalignment. You're not where your soul longs to be. You're out of rhythm with your own life. But here's the thing, feeling lost is not a failure, it's a flare. Your soul's signal that something essential is missing. And if you're brave enough to listen to it, it can become the beginning of a new path. The scripts you didn't write and why they don't work. The reason so many people feel lost is because they're living lives they never consciously chose. They're following blueprints handed to them by parents, schools, society. Scripts built on expectations, not on self-discovery. You were told who to be before you had a chance to discover who you are. You were taught to seek approval, not purpose. To fit in, not to awaken. In Stoic thought, this is known as living in accordance with externals, where your identity is shaped by things outside your control. Reputation, status, achievement, appearances. But Seneca warned that when you rely on these for direction, you will never find a port if you don't know which harbor you're sailing to. This loss of direction creates a quiet crisis. You may look successful from the outside, but inside, you feel like a ghost. Disconnected, drifting, haunted by a question you can't quite name. Neuroscience shows that when we're constantly living according to external cues, the default mode network in our brain, our inner narrator, gets hijacked. We lose touch with our own desires. We become reactive instead of reflective. We move, but we're not going anywhere that matters. But here's the truth. You're not broken. You're just misaligned. The life you're living doesn't match the truth you carry. And until you start questioning the scripts you inherited, you'll keep repeating a story that was never yours to begin with. The Inner Compass, rediscovering your true north. You are not without guidance. Even in your most disoriented state, something deep within you knows the way. This is what the Stoics called nature, not just the external world, but your inner nature, your unique essence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Dig within. Within is the wellspring of good, and it is always ready to bubble up if you just dig." When you feel lost, it's not because you lack a map. It's because you've been looking outside yourself for a compass that's always been within. Modern psychology confirms this ancient wisdom. The concept of self-concordance, living in alignment with your deepest values, shows that people thrive when their goals match their true selves. Not the self shaped by fear or expectation, but the one rooted in authenticity, meaning, and growth. So how do you find your inner compass? You begin by asking better questions, not what should I do, but what feels true. Not what will they think, but what do I believe. Not how do I win, but what kind of person do I want to become. Stillness helps. So does solitude. So does paying attention to what lights you up and what drains your soul. Your passions, your pain, your longings, they are not random. They are clues. You are not meant to follow someone else's path. You are meant to walk your own, even if it begins in darkness. Feeling lost is not a sign of failure. It's a sacred invitation to stop, to listen, and to come home to yourself. The myth of the straight path. embracing the spiral journey. Most people believe life is a straight line, that you're supposed to go from one clear step to the next. School, career, marriage, success. But that illusion is the very thing that deepens your feeling of being lost. Because real life is not linear, it's a spiral. Ancient traditions understood this. In Hinduism and Buddhism, the spiral represents the journey of consciousness. Not forward, but inward and upward. In nature, growth doesn't happen in lines, but in spirals. Think of galaxies, hurricanes, seashells, even DNA. Everything circles back, but never to the same place. You revisit your fears, your doubts, your wounds, but from a new level of awareness. The same breakup, the same failure, the same questions, they return. But each time, you're different. Each cycle brings wisdom, depth, clarity. If you judge yourself by linear standards, how far ahead you are, how fast you're moving, you'll always feel behind. But if you honor the spiral of your growth, you'll begin to see that you're exactly where you need to be. There's no straight road to meaning. There are detours, pauses, breakdowns, and restarts. You might be walking through confusion right now, but that doesn't mean you're off course. It may mean you're finally breaking free from the path that was never yours to begin with. You're not lost. You're in the spiral, and it's leading you home. Reclaiming the compass, rediscovering your inner guidance. When you feel lost, the instinct is to look outside yourself. You chase advice. You follow trends. You imitate people who seem like they've figured it out. But the more you chase external certainty, the further you drift from your own truth. The Stoics taught that the ultimate source of clarity is not in the world, but within. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." But how often do we listen to it? Modern neuroscience supports this wisdom. Studies show that introspection, deep self-reflection, activates the brain's default mode network, the part linked to imagination, moral reasoning, and identity. Yet we've been trained to override this, to numb the discomfort, to stay busy. Spiritual traditions have long called this inner knowing the still small voice, or the whisper of intuition. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it waits. Sometimes being lost is the only thing that brings you back to it. Instead of rushing to fix your life, ask, what feels meaningful to me even if it doesn't make sense? What pulls at me even if it scares me? Where does my soul feel at peace even when my mind is afraid? The answers don't come all at once, but they begin to surface when you give them space. You don't need a map. You need a compass. And that compass, the quiet wisdom of your inner self, has been with you all along. The courage to begin one step at a time. The journey from feeling lost to finding meaning doesn't happen in one grand leap. It happens in 1,000 quiet choices. One of the greatest lies we've been sold is that we must have it all figured out before we take action. But ancient wisdom and modern psychology both reveal something different. Clarity comes through movement. The Buddha said, "There's no path to happiness. Happiness is the path." Likewise, Stoic philosophers believe that purpose is not found. It's created step by step through virtuous action. Even neuroscience confirms this. Studies show that taking small intentional steps, even if you're unsure, builds momentum and rewires your brain toward confidence and purpose. So if you're feeling lost, don't wait for the fog to clear. Take one small step, not toward perfection, but toward what feels honest. That might be journaling your thoughts, taking a walk in nature, reaching out to someone you trust, or simply saying no to something that drains you. It doesn't have to be grand, it just has to be real. Direction is not something you find. It's something you build with each decision that honors your values over your fears. And slowly, step by step, the unknown becomes less threatening. The path becomes clearer. And the place that once felt like lost starts to feel like home. Coming home to yourself. What if the feeling of being lost was never a sign that something was wrong with you, but an invitation to return to yourself, to remember who you were before the world told you who to be, to clear away the noise and come back to the quiet truth of your own soul. Ancient traditions called this anamnesis, the process of unforgetting, of recovering your inner compass. The Stoics called it living in accordance with nature, not the trees and rivers, but your own true nature. In a world that rewards conformity, to live authentically is an act of courage. Feeling lost may be your soul's way of rejecting a life that doesn't align, a protest against numbness, distraction, and the slow death of your spirit. And so healing begins with acceptance, not the passive kind, but the radical kind. The kind that says, I don't need to have all the answers, but I can start listening again. You don't need to chase purpose. You only need to become quiet enough to hear it. You don't need to see the whole path. You only need to take the next loving step. Because you were never really lost. You were just being called back to the one place you've forgotten to look, within.